Hello, everybody. My name is Marsh, and today we're going to be doing a review for the first 3 episodes of season 2 of The Wheel of Time. Let's jump into it. So, season 2 for Wheel of Time just dropped. I'm going to go ahead and break this video up into a few different parts. The first part's going to be my spoiler free impressions since it's the first few episodes. And then I'm going to go into a spoiler filled section with my pros and cons. And then I might have a third part where it's book related spoilers in regards to things in the future that may happen and implications that may happen due to that. So I'll definitely give that warning if I am going to jump into that. In the spoiler section, I will talk about books, but it's not going to be any future books. It'll just be things that were left out in the original books that were taking place in this season and the previous season. So the first book and like part of the second. Only if it's left out, I'll mention it. With that being said, if you could leave a like and subscribe, that'd be greatly appreciated. I'm going to cover every episode. They're going to be mostly spoiler filled from this point on, but let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so we had 3 episodes, so there's a lot to cover. Spoiler free for right now. So, spoiler free, I'm going to give you my impressions, what I liked that they did, and what I didn't like that they did, and then we'll jump into the nitty gritty. First and foremost, just to give you a warning, I didn't really like season 1 as a book reader. It's hard for me to separate it, but for season 2, I will say a lot of the beginning of season 2 is suffering from the things that they set up in season 1. A lot of changes they made, a lot of those decisions are things that are getting pushed into season 2, and we're having to deal with those changes. And a lot of them are things that didn't happen in the books. I won't talk about them just for spoiler reasons. But because of that, we're dealing with that. And so the plot is not as clear as it should be, in my opinion, for these first 3 episodes at least. We don't have an exact plan of where we're going, what we're doing, what the plan is here. There's kind of just things happening. There is one plot line where there is things that are happening and we know where it's going, or we know like what the goal is. But outside of that, the rest of the plot lines don't really have a specific goal. So it's kind of just meandering. That's one of the biggest issues. The other issue I say as well is the melodrama. I will say a lot of these conflicts and issues and things they're focusing on are so melodramatic. And a lot of them are problems that would have never even been there in the first place if they didn't make certain changes in season 1. And I'll go into detail about that. But due to the changes they made, it's causing extra drama and time to be spent on these certain things that we don't care about. And they're focusing on certain plot lines that don't necessarily matter. Now, there is some good. I will say the things that will happen at the tower in season 2 in the beginning, I enjoyed very much. I won't go into detail anymore because of that. But that there is some good parts with that. I do still have complaints as a book reader because it's just obvious as a book reader to have complaints. Um, but yeah, that's my biggest issue is the melodrama caused from the things they set up in season 1 and them trying to solve those things. Now, in terms of like some pros, the visuals, they definitely stepped up the visuals, I will say. A lot of the weaving and using of the one power is better. They are explaining things a lot better. In season 1, I had the notion I knew what the books were and I've read them, and so I knew what things were and what was happening, but I had the idea that if you were a new person who has no clue what's going on, are you going to understand what's happening here? I will say they do start explaining them things that should have been explained in season 1, and they are giving context to certain things, which is good. That's one of the positives. I don't know where the season's going just yet. There's a lot of things that are positive, a lot of things that aren't. Right now, it's about average for me as a TV goer. As a book fan, it's kind of negative for me, to be quite honest with you. And I apologize if it's a negative review, but they are betraying a lot of things in the books, and they're doing different things and taking certain scenes and doing it on their own and leaving certain things out and not beholding to what the characters are, in my opinion. But as a TV only viewer, if I were to never read the books, I think it's pretty average TV for the most part. That's basically it for the spoiler free. Let's go ahead and jump into the nitty gritty. This will be spoilers for the first 3 episodes. Nothing beyond that. I'll talk about things they left out, things I liked, things I didn't like. There may be some slight book spoilers in terms of book one, which is season one, but there's not going to be anything in the future that I will spoil. There's no plot lines I'll spoil. I'm just going to talk about the changes they made that I may have not liked and changes that I might have liked. So there's your warning. We're starting it now. We're going to go episode by episode and we'll get to it. Episode 1. The first change they made that I hate is that in regards to Moiraine and Lan. Moiraine and Lan, sorry. The fact that they had to cut Moiraine off from the source was a horrible decision that I don't think they should have made in the first place. Because of that decision, we spent a large amount of time with the characters, like I said, being melodramatic, dealing with these issues like, oh, I'm so sad, I can't weave. I'm not going to share my information with Lan. Let's argue with each other. Let's be sad, blah, blah, blah. We'll just cause conflict for no reason. We're not going to further the plot. We're just going to have unresolved conflict because we can have unresolved conflict. That's basically my biggest issue, and it's with a thing that should have never even happened because they should have never even cut her off of the source. And then even on that same aspect with this melodrama, you have Lan, who is known as a stoic. He is the most stoic character that shows no emotion, and you have him breaking that multiple times, throwing a little hissy fit at one point with Moiraine, and it's just out of character. And that's what I mentioned before. They're going against a lot of the characters, like who they are in the books, which is an upset thing for me. Sorry if this is a negative review. I'm just venting out here. So in terms of Lan and Moiraine and their whole storyline with episode 1 at least, that's basically it. She gets like the Hearthstone, as they call it, and a poem from Bayle Domon. I did like Bayle Domon, the way that they got his accent correct, and he was like a pirate and he speaks in a funny way. I like the portrayal of that. Varen Sedai I like. Alanna I don't care as much for, but Varen I like. One complaint as well with their storyline was them fighting the Fades. One, why is Moiraine randomly going out? She saw the Fades were coming in to the area in the first place, so she knows it's dangerous. She shouldn't be doing that with no powers. Two, why does she think she can kill a Fade? It's been proven in the books, at least, that Fades take multiple people to kill, and like even top tier warders like Lan can't even handle one. Meanwhile, there's 3. The other thing about it is they both get stabbed by the Fades. It's well known in the books that the Fades have poisoned blades, similar to that of Lord of the Rings with the Ring Wraiths. Anyways, they have poisoned blades. They should be dead. You can't get stabbed by them and survive. Not multiple times. Not as many stabs as like Lan had, for example. So, and they don't even mention the poison. They heal them the next episode, but they don't mention it. That's enough with their story, though. My other issue I have with episode 1, and a lot of my issues are specifically episode 1 because I think the other episodes improve overall with what they're trying to do, but they still have plenty of problems. My other issue I have is them not explaining things right away. So we leave season 1 and Rand tells Moiraine to tell everyone that he died. Okay, so we can tell everyone we died, but we just magically teleport and they're in the White Tower. Perrin is looking for Padon Fane with Uno and Massima and all those people. Ugh, the other dude, I forgot his name. I apologize. And everyone's like separated. And yeah, that's fine. We can skip forward and do that. But I think it would have been nice to have some context as to what happened. Like why, like a time skip, how'd they get in the tower? Because it's just a jump and we're like, when did we get here? What's going on? Loial and Perrin are looking for Padon Fane, but why? We don't know why exactly. We just know that he took the horn. So a little context and explaining and slowing down, they could have a time lapse and do it, and that would have fixed a lot of problems. And I think part of it is like, I really feel like this show hates Rand as a character, if that makes sense. I was looking at, it took over 40 minutes for him to show up in the first episode, and it was for like 10 seconds. And the show is about Rand. He's the main character, the dragon, and the show hates him. And it's sad because some of his parts are actually some of the better parts in my opinion, even though they're not necessarily book faithful. I enjoy his portrayal and what he's doing with Selene and things like that. back to now that we talked about the time skip issue, let's jump to Egwene and Nynaeve. They're in the tower, they're getting trained. So Nynaeve goes through the accepted trial in the third episode. Happens a lot earlier in the books and a lot quicker. And they also meet Elaine a lot quicker. We meet Elaine in episode 2. I'm fine with that. At first, I had it as a complaint because we should have met her in the first place in Camelin, but they didn't do Camelin in season 1. But they're getting trained. One thing I wish they showed a better aspect of is the discipline required in the tower. So, in case you don't read the books, the tower is pretty brutal in terms of Aes Sedai being assholes to the accepted and the novices. So they will often switch the novices, send them off for punishments, and there's only one time you really get talk of any punishment. And Egwene and everyone is just walking around disrespectfully. Usually in the tower, whenever you address an Aes Sedai, you have to say their name, and you say like Leandrin Aes Sedai, and you then curtsy, and you have to be respectful and listen to what they say no matter what, because that's the way the tower works. And they didn't have that idea of respect because there's multiple moments where Egwene's just standing up to them and not doing anything. So I wish they can change that. But let's talk about something positive at least. That of the weaves. They're going through it. They're talking about details. They're showing it. There was a little lesson there with Alanna and Egwene and Nynaeve. And so that's good. They're going through showing the weaves a little bit. They're explaining how the power works and a few other things. And so it's not all negative, and I do enjoy that. And I enjoyed the time in the tower for the most part with what they've shown in the season so far. I just wish they didn't skip to it abruptly and like just magically get there for that. With Nynaeve, though, one thing I didn't like in the first episode, and that continues in the other ones, is this idea of her always running away to be with the warders and train with the warders. That's out of nowhere. It's not in the book. She doesn't do that. She's a wisdom. She's there to protect Nynaeve. And like, there's no let me run away for the ward. It just doesn't really make much sense. It goes against her character in the books, and it's like this thrown in like girl power thing that they're like trying to do with some of the characters, and it's like it's not really necessary. She's already powerful as is. And that's my 2 cents on that, but it just felt forced, especially with I'm not the like relationship they're doing with like Alanna and her warders. I guess they're building the bond with it, but Alana's not that important in the books, and so they really like her in the show for some reason, and her warders, but that is what it is. Anyways, so yeah, the tower is good so far in the first episode. Rand, we don't get much of. Perrin, we get a few moments of him searching with Uno, and one thing I didn't like is Elias just randomly shows up. They don't explain who Elias is. They're kind of shoelining his story from book 1 into this. For that reason, I won't go into detail of who he is, but they don't really explain where he came from for that. And so it's just like the crew doing things. I did enjoy certain aspects of it, like him going to the house where all the people were murdered and things like that. But I just wish they explained things a little more in the beginning, because it's like, here's a time skip, things are happening, but now we're meandering. We're meandering after a time skip. And the plot doesn't necessarily feel like it's going forward with anyone outside of like a few moments. That's basically it for episode 1, though. This whole like fake Rand is dead thing, and it was just like a waste of time. They could have done most of it in like a time skip and then furthered the plot, in my opinion. Episode 2, we get more Rand, which is good. I enjoy Rand's parts. He's in Cairhien, and he's playing the House of Games. We see that in episode 3, and he's working in like a mental PTSD hospital thing. That's not in the books at all. It's different, but like, I don't know. I don't know if I like the change. He's supposed to be with like Mat and Perrin and Cairhien, or not, or at least Mat and Cairhien. Selene is there in Cairhien though, so that is true. The way they do that, we'll see where they go with that. I like that relationship so far. One of the better parts, but I like Rand's part so far, even though it's a different change. I like what they're doing with it. It's obviously not book faithful, but it's interesting. Episode 2 was really like the Liandrin episode at the tower. Now with Liandrin, They have like a moment where she like finds like her son who's like aging out and dying because she lives forever since she's Aes Sedai. It's interesting, and it gives some depth to the character because she is a red. Reds don't necessarily get in relationships or like men or have kids or anything like that. So this is like a little secret of hers. Not in the books, by the way. At least unless I'm somehow forgetting that. But it's cool depth for the character, but I think it does go against the character themselves as a red. But it's interesting is a TV show, what they're doing with that and the emotion they're bringing. I do have issues with like the whole like Leandrin type of thing. I don't know. The duo of her trying to like train and convince Nynaeve is interesting. I'll leave it at that. There's things I like about it, things I don't like, but nothing like I can't get into without spoilers. Um, but episode 2 is fine. We meet Elaine. It's a good introduction. I'm fine with Elaine so far, with how she meets Nynaeve and everything. To talk about Matt for a bit, we see he's being held prisoner. Matt crying and breaking down and stuff. It's not really in his character. I don't think he really ever cries and breaks down at all. Okay, he does in the books, but in different moments. This doesn't really fit. He's more lackadaisical, always being sarcastic, smartass type of person. So he gets that later in the episode, but we'll see how it goes. He also meets Min. I don't know if I like what they're doing with Min, but we'll see what happens with that as well. But yeah, episode 2. It's basically it. More melodramatic stuff. I think that's my biggest issue. Everything's just so melodramatic. Episode 2 was the best one, though, in my opinion, because I have less complaints about it. But let's just jump into... Oh, there is one thing to talk about with episode 2. Perrin, and they get attacked by the Sanshin. And Ishamael is with them. Doesn't make sense, but okay, that's what they're setting up. And the Sanshin attacking, that's what they're setting up as well. I can't talk about it, but it's definitely different from the books. I can see what they're doing. I don't know if I agree with it. I just don't know where they're going with this, per se, just yet. But we'll see. We'll jump into 3 since it's tied into it, though. Episode 3. It started out so well. It literally started out so well. And then they ruined it. So it starts out with Nynaeve going through the accepted trials. So it was... The second part of it was pretty faithful. The remainder of it, I had issues. So with the trials, you go through these 3 pillars, and with each of them, they show your biggest fears, and you have to face them and turn away from them, and then you can exit. The first one they showed was her parents dying. It's not in the books. That's a new thing they brought. I was fine with it. It gives depth to the character. That's what they want to do with it. That's fine. In the books, they have her like fighting people instead and like running away from like Forsaken. And so it's different, but she hasn't really seen a Forsaken, so I guess they can't really do that. So I was fine with the first one. The second one, she goes to her village and she sees the plague. It's similar to the books. I don't remember exactly since I haven't read it in a while, but her village is in help and she needs to help them and she has to leave the village. So that was good. It was great from that point. And I was actually really happy. I'm like, okay, 3rd episode, best episode so far, loving it. And then the 3rd one happened. And this is supposed to be one of the most heartbreaking, memorable ones in the books. And it was one of the chapters I remember like hitting me when I first read it. And I was like, whoa. And so she goes through, she gets like a weird vision of like Lan dying and stuff like that. And she comes back through and she's like, I'm not going to accept being accepted. I'm not going to take your ring. And she abandons the tower. And then she finds Lan. And then we see like the thing behind her. And it's like, oh, she's still in the trial. And then she doesn't listen. She stays in there. And that's where I have the problem. Because a lot of the stuff with Nynaeve is like here... The way they're like making her is like, here's like some Deus Ex Machina Goku shit where she just gets angry and screams and goes Super Saiyan and kills a bunch of people. Or she gets angry and she could Deus Ex Machina out of her whatever shit show she put herself in. And it's like, no. Do it how it's supposed to. In the book, she's supposed to have a kid with Lan like she does. They have this moment, but there's no crazy Trolloc attack per se. Or actually, I think there might be, but either way, the whole point of the book, there was a beautiful metaphor with like a bloody rose and a thorn and like stabbing it. And she has to make a decision between her and Lan and giving up Lan or coming back. Now, in the book, it's a very traumatic moment. The problem I have is the sequence that they did this in. They made it to where she didn't come through, and now we have to spend a whole episode being melodramatic, even though we know she's going to come back magically. It's just a waste of like 30 minutes of an episode where we could have furthered a plot in a different way instead of just making Egwene cry for 30 minutes and Liandrin pretend to cry and like all this melodrama for literally no reason. We could have furthered the plot at that point. That's my biggest complaint with it. So we'll go to something more positive at least, because I did enjoy the trial. I just hated that they did that because it was a waste of time. Okay, more positive. We have Perrin with the Seanchan. This is not in the books. The Seanchan don't show up and attack Perrin and his squad. But I enjoyed what they did. They killed Uno. He doesn't die like that in the books. But it was cool. It was interesting. I don't know why the Forsaken is there. I see they're trying to tie in the villains with like the Seanchan, I guess, to make them the big bad guys. Whatever. I like how they're showing the Seanchan so far. They got the Texan accents because the Seanchan are from the United States, essentially. They have Southern accents. So that's why they talk like that. I know it seems a little out of place, but remember, this isn't a fantasy medieval world per se. This is a futuristic world that's been destroyed multiple times, a futuristic Earth that's been destroyed multiple times. It's post-apocalyptic, technically. It's not medieval. Just remember that. So I like the portrayal of that. I like the fight, everything that occurred, even the wolves at the end coming to save them, Elias protecting them, and Perrin adapting and embracing his powers, and getting those visions, the wolf dreams. So that's good. I really enjoy what they're doing with Perrin. I enjoy what they're doing with Rand as well with Selene. We get to see the Game of Houses with Selene and Kyrian when they're in the dinner room and they're playing that. That's cool. We'll see where it goes for that. Things are supposed to happen. But I like Rand and Selene so far, the dynamic they built up. So I'm enjoying those two plot lines. I'm enjoying the White Tyra as well. I just don't like what they're doing in certain choices they're making. Lan and Moiraine I don't enjoy so far with Varen. They're like separate now. Once again, all this stupid melodrama that doesn't need to be there. It's just frustrating when it's just such a not necessary thing, or it's just such an unnecessary thing. But anyways, that's sort of my thoughts with all that. I'm not gonna actually do a spoiler future book stuff. I'm not gonna worry about that because this isn't the Wheel of Time as we know it. This is people using the concept and powers in Wheel of Time and making it their own story, as we've seen. But as a TV show, I'd say it's a 6 out of 10, 6.5. What would I give it so far? I think season 2 has a chance to be better than season 1. Not that that's hard. So far, it's just a little too melodramatic for me, but I like certain aspects of it, even though it's betraying the books. As a book reader, I hate it, just to be quite frank. But as a TV watcher, it's okay so far. We'll see where it goes. Hopefully it gets better and there's some payoffs and some good moments and even some good book moments that are brought from it. Tell me what you guys think about it though in the comments down below. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you like the changes being made? No spoilers for the end of the series and stuff past it. But if you want to talk about book changes I may have not mentioned, feel free. Other than that though, thank you all for watching. If you could leave a like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. I'll see you guys later for the next episode. Bye-bye.